speech from Joy Shoemate and Chloe McGinley, okay? And they are from College of the Canyons, Los Angeles from the US. And today they are going to help us to understand how we can use educational technology to ensure the academic integrity in e-learning. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Joy and Chloe to help us understand the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see some familiar faces again today, and hi to everyone online. Chloe and I are thrilled to be here joining you from Los Angeles, and today we'll be talking a bit about how we can utilize the technology, educational technology in particular, for developing our online classes, and really how we maintain our academic integrity. We want the quality of our courses to be consistent with the quality of our face-to-face classes. And so we'll be sharing with you some strategies for how we do this in California. So for many of you, some of these first slides might be familiar, but we might have some new folks joining us. So I'll move through them quickly just to give a little bit of background of who we are and where we're from. So our learning outcomes today, we hope that you will take away some strategies and some policies to maintain academic integrity in your online classes. We will discuss how open educational resources, OER, can be leveraged in our online or e-learning classes. And we'll talk about AI is very important and it's very new and it has a significant impact on how we teach and how we learn, especially online. So we'll talk about some ethical considerations about using AI and maybe even asking our students to use AI. You will see here a QR code on the screen, and hopefully for those of you online, it works for you to scan it. This is so you can access the slides. You can either follow along or you can read them later, but we want to share with you the resources here. So please feel free to scan the QR code if you'd like so you can access the slides. So quickly, a little bit of information about Chloe and me. We work in a community college in California. For many students in the United States and across the world, community college is their first experience with college. It's often where students will come if they want to transfer to a four-year university or if they want to earn certifications in very specialized fields. So in California, the community college system that we're a part of is the largest university system in the United States and in the world. So we serve many, many students. So at our college, we are one of over 100 community colleges in the state of California. And if we move forward here, our college in particular has been teaching and learning online for, goodness, almost 20 years. But of course, a lot has changed recently as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So now, even today, about half of our courses are offered for our students online. And for us, online can look a lot of different ways. It can include asynchronous, so the students and the teachers never meet or see each other, but they access the materials through the learning management system. It can include synchronous meetings, so many of you are joining us from Google Meet. We use Zoom, so the students and the instructors meet via Zoom. Some of our online courses are like that. Others are hybrid, where some of the instruction happens in person and some of the instruction happens through the learning management system. And then lastly, and what we talked about yesterday was the challenge with high flex, where the instructor, the faculty member, is here in person. Students have the option to join us in person or join online. And that is another way that we offer online courses for our students at our college. So quickly, this might be familiar for some of you who were here yesterday. In the United States, more than half all university students will take at least one online course at some point during their university career. And in California, in the state of California, that number is a little less. But really what we wanted to demonstrate is, for us in the United States, we're very much aware that most university students will take at least one online course. And so we have to be prepared to offer quality education online, and we have to be prepared to provide students with really good learning opportunities and learning experiences. And that requires a lot of work, and it requires lots of preparation and training. So we're happy to share with you all some strategies that we share with our faculty when they're considering or preparing to teach online. Great. So we'll first talk about academic integrity, because even in the United States, we still run into questions about the quality of education when it's offered online. How do we make sure that the quality of learning that happens in the classroom can be just as successful online? And one of the ways that we can do that is by ensuring the integrity of our classes. So the first strategy that we share with our faculty is making sure that you have clear policies for your students. We want students to understand, and as faculty, you want to communicate to students what you expect of them, so that it is very clear that students know what is allowable, what isn't allowable, even the instructions and the directions. You know, here in person, we talked about yesterday, in person we can kind of read body language and cues, and if a student maybe looks confused, we'll go over or we'll ask, do you need me to explain that again? Online, we don't get that opportunity, so that's where being very clear with our instructions and with our policies is important, so that students can successfully complete the activities or the assignments, but also so that you, as the instructor, are receiving the work that you want students to be actually completing that will support their learning. Next is securing our assessments. This also can be challenging, because we want to know that the students who are enrolled in our online classes are the ones actually taking the exams or completing the assignments. And further along, we'll discuss some more specific strategies for how we can do that, but really we want to be thoughtful about the types of assessments that we give our students, because the easier it is for any student to maybe look up an answer, Google or use ChatGPT to look up an answer, the more likely it opens up the opportunity. Maybe that exam is not as secure. So we'll talk about some strategies to think through how can you determine what students know, so assess their learning, but in ways that are maybe more secure than some of our more traditional exams that we typically will give maybe in a face-to-face class. Accountability. This is an important quality that we hope students will develop their own sense of accountability when they're in college or in university. We want students to become responsible members of our societies. We want them to contribute and continue researching or expanding their own knowledge, and therefore improving the world around them. And a way that we can help students develop those skills is to really encourage them to develop accountability for themselves. And what that looks like is being very clear about what your expectations are, but also helping them develop the skills to manage their work and their deadlines and the due dates, because ultimately they will go into the world and work. And when you have a job, you have to produce reports by certain dates and at certain times. And so university is an opportunity for students to begin developing those skills to hold themselves accountable. Because ultimately, if we're able to develop relationships with our students where the students feel connected to you as their instructor, they'll also feel accountable to provide you with good quality work, because they will start to care about the work they produce. They will care about really being a good student and wanting to please you as their instructor, and that helps develop their sense of accountability. So it's not just what the skills that they're learning in the classroom, but it's really about how can we also prepare our students to be adults that enter the world and help make this world a better place. And that sense of accountability and responsibility, I think, is an important concept that we can help our students grow no matter what class they're taking, no matter what they're studying. Those are important life skills. Those will make them more prepared adults to enter the world. And then lastly, continuous improvement. For those who joined us yesterday, we talked about the opportunity that we as faculty have to be evaluating what it is that we are creating for students, how we are assessing students, and that really gives us an opportunity to learn from what we're doing and maybe try new things to make them better, and to not be afraid to try to assess our students in different ways, knowing that it might work really well and maybe it doesn't work as well this time when we teach the class, but there are opportunities to improve later. So that continuous development is also a way for us to be reviewing our own policies. Maybe we thought our instructions were really clear and then we realize, oh, students didn't quite understand. I need to revise that to make it more clear for my students. So it's an opportunity for students to be evolving and reflecting on their own work, but then us as faculty to reflect on what it is that we're doing and creating for students. So tools for upholding academic integrity. These are just some example tools. There are so many educational technology tools out there, but we just wanted to share briefly a bit about the types of tools that we use and how you all may consider using similar types of tools to maintain integrity in your online classes. So the first starts with our learning management system. You might use Moodle, or we use Canvas as our learning management system. And there are so many systems out there that really have robust tools built into them to help us secure our exams. So things like in Canvas, for example, there are quiz settings where you can build quizzes, but also within Canvas there are settings that will shuffle the questions so no two students are getting the questions in the same order. They can also do things like shuffle the answers themselves. So if you're on question 2, answer A for one student might be answer C for the next student. They might seem like small tools, but those are strategies that you can use where you're still assessing students in the same way, but you're protecting the exam to ensure that you're really learning what is it that you know, not what is it that you're maybe copying from your friend or someone else in the class. So tools within the learning management system can be really helpful for helping us think through how we can ensure academic integrity. There are other features like discussion boards. We use discussions in our learning management system often, and that's where, as the faculty, you can pose a question to students and students can respond. They can engage with each other, which is really good. But we can also think about what types of questions are we asking? Are we asking open-ended questions where the responses are going to look different based on the different students who answer? Are we asking questions that ask our students to reflect on themselves or their community or their own experiences? That way, each response will be unique. It won't be the same. If we just ask like a close-ended question, a student could just look up the answer and you're going to get a bunch of students responding with the same answer. So even using the tools within your learning management system, there are ways to ask the questions differently so that you can really, it calls on students to be creative and use critical thinking, even though we're using some of those tools that are already there in our learning management system. Next, we use a tool called Turnitin. That is like a plagiarism detection tool. Again, we like to think of these tools as they're not the solution for securing your exams or your assessments, but really they work well when you pair them with policies that are clear. So if you explain to students, I expect you to cite your sources. You have to give credit to the person whose research you are referring to. If you're clear about that, then when they submit and turn it in, and maybe it's not that they plagiarized, but maybe they didn't cite their sources properly, that's a learning opportunity where you as the faculty can work with the student to say, okay, we didn't give credit to these other authors, and maybe there are other resources in the library that can help students learn those skills. So those sorts of tools can be used, kind of leveraged along with the other resources that you as faculty have to teach students, but also maybe other resources on campus like a library that could teach students how to do their research and how to cite in a way that is ethical and academic, what we expect our young academics. And then finally, we use a tool called HonorLock. There are many different types of online proctoring tools. The use of that tool is not required at our college, but it's available if our faculty choose to use it. Some of the benefits of an online proctoring tool are that faculty can choose what settings work for them. So it can be having students show an ID to verify that I'm the student in your class, and you see my ID and it verifies that I'm the student taking the exam. There are other ways that tools like that can secure your exam, like not allowing students to open another browser, or detecting if a student says, hey Google or hey Siri, and is trying to ask a question of the devices around them. So there are a lot of ways that those tools can be utilized, and I would encourage you all, maybe as a university together, you determine what is an appropriate use of those sorts of tools. Again, it doesn't solve all the problems, but it can be a way that you leverage technology to help you secure those exams so that you're maintaining the quality of your online classes. So some other strategies that we wanted to share with you, and this we work with our faculty a lot, are strategies called authentic assessments. So instead of maybe more traditional exams, I grew up where you take an exam and it's multiple choice, A, B, or C, or maybe you have essay exams where you're writing an essay or typing an essay. Authentic assessments are different ways of assessing what students know. So a paper might tell you a little bit about what a student knows, but what if you have a student whose strength is not writing? If they're not maybe a very good writer, you may not actually know what they've really learned in your class because maybe they just can't express it or communicate it well in writing. Or a multiple choice exam. Some students get really nervous when it's time to take an exam, and maybe they just don't perform well on that type of a test. So we may not actually know what they've learned. We just see how well they performed on that particular exam. Maybe they were nervous that day, maybe they didn't have time to study, but is it really assessing what they know? So some examples of authentic assessments might be, and this isn't a full list, but these are just some ideas. Maybe something like a case study where you're providing students with some existing research, and the students either individually or maybe collaborating in a group, because you can still work in groups online. Maybe they're reading through the case and then you're asking questions where they're connecting what they're reading in the case to what they're learning in your class. So it actually requires higher level critical thinking, but it's a way that you're really able to gauge, are you as the student making the connection between something in the real world, a case in the real world, and what we're learning in our textbook, or what I'm sharing with you when I'm lecturing to you in the class. So that's a different way that still tells you as the faculty, what is it that my students have learned? Or what are they missing? Maybe they're not making certain connections that you want them to make, and that's an opportunity for you as the faculty to learn, oh, okay, some of my students haven't made that connection yet. So that's a way of assessing what students know, just maybe in a slightly different way. Another example is peer review. That can be really great because, again, learning is a social process. We want students to be connecting with each other and learning from each other. This can also help with academic integrity because if students are turning in part of an assignment and then they're getting some feedback from a peer and then they turn it in again using that feedback to improve their work, they're less likely to be maybe hiring someone else to do that work or finding another way to do that work, because actually they're receiving feedback from their colleagues, from their peers in their class. So that can be a really effective tool. And also as faculty, we can provide feedback too. So students can get feedback from us as the instructor and also from their peers. And then it's an opportunity to continue improving their work before they submit like a final paper or a final project, for example. Another idea is project-based learning. So this could be assigning students, again, individual projects or group projects, but really it's about connecting the learning to something else. So students are coming up with a creative project, a creative idea to demonstrate their learning. And that's really great, because I don't know about you, but sometimes it gets boring reading the same paper about the same topic that every student submits. But when they're creating projects, you might get different projects that different students or different groups submit. Again, they're able to demonstrate what they know because they're connecting what they've learned in your class, and now they're creating something new. That can be a really great way, again, for you to get a clearer understanding of what your students have learned. And it helps ensure that it's actually the student's work rather than someone else, because they're following the prompt to create the project that you're asking them to create. They can't just copy that from someone else from another class if the project or the assignment was completely different. Self-reflection, that can be a really great tool. Again, we talk about that accountability for students. When we ask students to actually reflect on their own process and their own learning, that helps them develop a sense of accountability, because they have to share with you the process that they went through, either to complete the assignment or to complete the course. Maybe they share with you, this is what I knew when I started your course. This is all the things I didn't know, and I've studied and I've practiced, and I went to the library and I found a tutor and I worked with friends, and now I'm reflecting on all the things I have learned since. That really asks them to be very clear and reflect on themselves of, what work have I done as the student? What have I put into this course? And that can be really helpful. It doesn't have to be at the end of a class. It could be throughout the class. You might ask them to reflect on their learning, maybe also reflect on what's clear and what questions do they still have, because that can help you as the instructor learn where maybe there are some concepts that are not quite clear yet that you want your students to know. And then our last example, or last strategy of authentic assessment, is open pedagogy. For those who might be familiar with open educational resources, those are freely available resources, and the license allows you to use the work as you see fit and allows other people to use the work. Open pedagogy is similar, where it's really inviting the students to help you with creating content. So maybe you ask students to research people in the field, like scientists in your field or your area of expertise. Well, if you collect what the students submit, now that becomes something that future students can learn from. They can learn from the work of previous students. Maybe you decide as a faculty member, I want to explain this concept to students, but it's not in the textbook and I don't really see it elsewhere. Maybe you work with students to actually write that material, and so they become researchers, they become experts in learning what it is, and together you actually work together to create content for the course. That can be a really effective way of students feeling a sense of participation and belonging to their learning. But it also builds trust, because as faculty we're saying, I trust you to create good quality work, and we're going to work together. That again also helps foster that accountability, where as a faculty I'm telling you that I trust your good work and we're going to do this together. And so as students, I have to create some good work and do my very best, because I'm working with my instructor to create something that really will live on after the class ends. So those are some strategies and some ways that you can still learn from your students about what it is that they are learning in your class. And it helps in terms of academic integrity. It helps ensure that your students are really learning what it is you want them to learn, because they're demonstrating their learning in ways that require them to really use their own critical thinking and use their own ideas to demonstrate their learning. Okay, so now Chloe will take it away.
So we want to now talk about generative AI in online education. This is a new technology that has some really positive impacts on education, but it also has some very potentially negative implications on education. And especially for, it impacts in-person classes as well, but when we're teaching online, it can be disconcerting for the instructors to wonder, are students turning in work that is their work, or are they just typing in something into ChatGPT and getting some answer and submitting it to me, and they're not using their brain? So it's something that we really need to think about, and at our college we have put a lot of thought into this, and I want to share with you all some of the ways that we are addressing it, but we're still learning. So I would love to also hear from all of you of how maybe you are addressing this. So first of all, I want to just talk about what are some of the positives with generative AI that we're seeing. One of the ways is AI can be a really useful tool for students to get help with their own personal learning gaps. So they're learning something new in the class and then being able to go into a tool, generative AI tool, and type in, get ideas for research projects, get ideas for how to develop their understanding. So we are developing courses for our students on using generative AI responsibly, helping them to have that literacy to know what AI is and what it can and cannot do. Faculty can also use generative AI to revise their assignments. Maybe you've had an assignment you've been doing for many years and it's maybe time to freshen it up and think of a new way. So AI can be like a buddy, another fellow teacher that you can say, is there another way I can think of this? Or maybe for a new generation of students, how can I make this content relatable to the new generation or to a current event that's happening in the world? So it can help us to keep our content fresh and it can be a very time-saving tool. Many of our instructors are generating big quiz banks and then reviewing them for correctness and editing them, but it can save you a lot of time and help you create good content. But it's very important for us to recognize that AI has big limitations. It has inherent biases that are in the tool, and it also creates false information. So we don't want to rely on AI to think, oh, we can just use this tool and make our classes better, because it's not always going to give us correct information. And so it's very important for us to be critical in our use of the tool, and to analyze it critically ourselves and to teach our students how to analyze it critically. So some of the ways that we can maintain academic integrity with AI is to really think through how we are creating clear policies and guidelines for our students. That's probably the number one way, because if we don't address it, students are going to use it. Many students think of AI as like Microsoft Word or the internet, that it's just another tool, digital tool that they can use to improve their work and to be better, to sound better. Many of our students are foreign language, so they speak other languages. English is not their first language. So when they come to our college and they're trying to create work, they want to just, I'll use AI because it'll sound better. It'll be more correct. So we want to provide the resources for students to understand when is it okay to use it, how can you use it correctly, and when should you not use it, and why should you not use it. So we want to create those very clear policies, clear guidelines, and then create the training resources for students and for our faculty so that we can all learn and make sure that we understand this technology. So here are some sample AI policy language that faculty can include in their syllabi. So I want to read it because it's very small, but I want to show you an example. So this first one is if you want to allow students to use AI. Here's an example of what you can include. And you're welcome to use this. And I'm also going to share with you a link that we've based this off of, where I think it's hundreds now. It's like a collection from across the US, universities across the US, that people are sharing their policies. And it's very helpful. Many of them are discipline specific, and you'll notice that based on your discipline, your use may be very different. So it's something to think about. So in this example, it says students can use AI or machine learning tools when noted for assignments in this course if it is properly documented and credited. So we want to teach students to be transparent about their use of this tool. And there's in a way that we provide a citation, just like APA, MLA citations, we provide a way. So we say, for example, ChatGPT, year, month, date, what did you do, what text did you use, and then you put the link, something like that. Whatever you feel is appropriate, but you can tell students, this is how I want you to cite your use of AI. And then including a statement that's to remind students that be aware that information derived from these AI tools is often inaccurate or incomplete. So you must critically evaluate the output of the tools, consider its potential for bias and limitations, and corroborate information obtained from the tools with other credible sources. So reminding students, this is a starting point. You can use this as a tool, but it's your responsibility to take it a step further, to evaluate it critically. So that's an example. If you're going to allow it, you could include a statement like that. You might also use a conditional statement. And this might even be at an assignment-specific level. So you may say, this is my overall statement, but some assignments I'm going to be more restrictive, and you'll have a specific statement for that. So students are allowed to use generative AI on assignments in this course if instructor permission is obtained in advance. Unless given permission to use these tools, each student is expected to complete each assignment without substantive assistance from others, including automated tools. So this lets students know, oh, I can ask. I'm going to ask the instructor, is it okay if I use this tool because I want it to check my paper to see if I can make improvements? Is that an appropriate way? So case by case. And then this is more restrictive. So AI use is not allowed. Use of an AI generator is explicitly prohibited unless otherwise noted by the instructor. Additionally, be aware that the information derived from these tools is often inaccurate. It's imperative that all your work should be your own. Any assignment that's found to have been plagiarized or to have used unauthorized AI tools may receive a 0 and/or be reported for academic misconduct. So that's more restrictive, but it's also giving you the room as the instructor to, okay, that's my overall policy, I don't allow it, but perhaps on a certain assignment, you will say, for this specific assignment, you are allowed to start with AI to get your ideas, or however your plan is. And then I wanted to share this link. So this is in the slides, that you can click on this link. It's a crowdsourced public document. You can add your own policies to it, and it's a wealth of information. So it's been very helpful for us to review. So some 3 main ways that we want to focus on for ensuring academic integrity in the world of AI. The first, as I mentioned before, is transparency in communication. So we want to really make sure our students understand what it means to use this tool and understand what our expectations are. Make it very clear for them, so there's no hazy confusion. Oh, maybe I can, I'm not really sure, I'm going to try. So make it very clear and encourage students to ask questions. So if students know that this is a conversation they're allowed to have, they're going to come to you and they'll say, is it okay if I use this? I found this other tool. Can I use this one? It looks like it's a research tool. Is that okay? And then they won't feel like they're going to get penalized. Oh my goodness, how dare you think about using this tool? But no, we can have a conversation. It's new and we're all learning together. And then emphasize learning process over outcome. So we have students come to our classes, and it's really about the learning, right? It's the process of learning where their brains are growing and we are learning how to think and how to be critical thinkers. It's not so much about, you know how to do this one algebra problem, you know how to do this, write this one essay, you have succeeded because you produced this. We know AI can produce it, so we don't need a producer. We need students that are critical thinkers, that are able to imagine and be creative and problem solve. So in our online classrooms or our e-learning activities, We want to make sure that we are encouraging the process and we're emphasizing the process. This is letting students know, why am I asking you to do all these steps? Because it helps you to understand and think through it so that you can do it again in other ways. And then our design of our assessments is very, very important. So we want to, kind of like what Joy was saying with our discussion, the way that we describe or write our prompts for assignments, the way that the questions that we can ask very simple questions. What date did this event occur and where? They can look it up and done. Or we can ask them to pull in their personal experiences and to draw on their lived experiences and things that they're seeing in the world today, and just incorporate those higher level order of thinking. So instead of just memorization and produce, instead thinking about it, being critical. And many of our instructors are using AI in their assignments. So they are telling students, put this prompt into AI, see what it gives you, and then let's talk about it, and let's analyze it, and let's see where it's missing information. And so there's a lot of ways that we can do this, even in a collaborative way. And this is a little screenshot of some of the courses that we've recently developed for AI. Just about a month ago, or last semester, we developed these. So it's 4 different courses. This is for our faculty. Each course is 1 week long. So the first course is Essential AI Literacy, where instructors learn what is AI, like how is it built, what does it do, what things should we be aware of, and what are its limitations. Then AI in education, and we're looking in that course about what's its potential. How can we use AI in education, and where are we seeing, maybe looking forward 5-10 years, where are we seeing this maybe taking us to develop more enriching experiences for our students? Teaching and learning with AI gets to be very practical. Okay, you're creating an assignment. How can you create this in a way that helps students to not just want to use AI, but to recognize the value of their own contributions and their own brains? And then academic integrity and AI policies. In that course, we have instructors design a policy for their class and for their assignments, and they share it with each other, which is really helpful because instructors like to see what other instructors are doing. It gives us good ideas. So these are some courses that we've developed, and this little screenshot in the middle, it's like it's from our learning management system. You click on one and it expands into content, and you can see there's a discussion, a knowledge check in each week. So in general, not just with AI, but in general for online learning, these 3 things are very important for communicating our expectations to students. So your syllabus is so important. And we know many students now are navigating their classes with their phones, so we encourage faculty, make your syllabus reader friendly. Don't just make it a PDF that now it's so tiny on their screen they can't read it, but make it interactive, include pictures, videos. Students are going to be more likely to read it. And make a syllabus quiz, make sure students have read the important information. And then set up your students for success by providing very clear guidelines, as we mentioned. It's so important. And then revising, always looking through, regularly reviewing, how did that go? Did that assignment, was that successful, or did students struggle? Where can I improve? How can I rethink this and change it up?
I will just briefly talk about how we can integrate open educational resources, OER, into our online classrooms, and kind of touching on our design of our online learning so that really it can enhance and support your teaching online. So we really look at OER as an opportunity to ensure that our students have equal access to their learning materials. I believe I shared this yesterday. I don't know about for all of you, but for us in the United States, textbooks are so expensive, and many of our students actually report they cannot afford the textbook, so they'll still take a class, but they won't buy the book. Now, many of us know as faculty, we assign the book because that's where you're going to learn the material. So how can a student be successful if they can't even read the material that we want them to be reading? What really is there to learn outside of your lectures if they don't have access to the material? Because OER is digital and it's freely available, and we can modify and change it the way we need for our class or for our students, it really ensures that every student has access to the material from the first day of class. And so when we're thinking through kind of more broadly about how do we support students so that they can be successful in our online classes, we look at OER as a tool, a very important tool to support that student success. And it ensures that everyone does have access to the materials immediately, and they continue to have access to the materials, so that when you are coming up with these creative activities and assignments for students to demonstrate their learning, they actually have something to demonstrate because they had access to read the material or view the material, however it is that you create that material for your online classes. Collaborative learning. I mentioned the concept of open pedagogy, and really that's an opportunity, if you choose, as an instructor, to work with your students, to collaborate with your students. That is critical for enhancing the learning for your students. But again, it also requires some of that higher order thinking instead of just, as Chloe was saying, just producing an artifact where you're just like regurgitating the facts. If you're collaborating with your students are required to think critically and to analyze what it is that you're asking them either to create or to evaluate. And together, you're actually collaborating to produce something that can then serve students in the future. It can be a process where future students are evolving the content and keeping it relevant and keeping it current. And that's really one of the opportunities with online learning, is that we get the opportunity to keep our teaching and learning very current and very relevant. We can bring in what's happening in the world around us. We can share events as they're happening and connect it to the learning in real time with an online class, whereas sometimes that can be a little more difficult. We can do that in our face-to-face classes, but it can be a little more challenging to do that. But the sort of beauty of online is that it allows us to collaborate with students in maybe a different way than we would if they were here in person and we're not working together on something that's shared and that improves the learning. So we view open pedagogy especially as a way to encourage critical thinking from students, but it also creates that opportunity for collaboration, which again helps build the connection to the course, students' connection to the course and to you as their instructors. And then again, I sort of mentioned this, but the cost savings. This is really important for all students. University is really expensive in the United States. Textbooks are very expensive. We all know it's expensive to live. So any opportunities where we can not only reduce costs, but really what that increases is students' ability to focus. If they're less concerned about how am I going to buy the textbook, can I buy the textbook, how am I going to learn the material, what do I do? Instead, they're not worrying about that. They're spending their mental energy, that cognitive load is focused on your learning materials. So it's not only a cost savings to students, but when we look at how can this support student success, a tool like OER or even open pedagogy can really be leveraged in a way that supports students' learning and enables them the opportunity to really focus on what it is that you want them to learn and focus on demonstrating that learning in all of those creative ways that we can then assess them. So this QR code here on the screen, it's a link to our website at College of the Canyons. It's our support page for our faculty. And we wanted to share that with you all because it links to a number of OER repositories if you want to search for OER. We have some resources for our faculty on how to engage in open pedagogy with students. And also many of our faculty at College of the Canyons have created OER textbooks, and those are available for all of you to use, or you can modify, you can make changes so that it fits your class and your students. So we just wanted to share some examples because we know that just as designing online classes can be a lot of work and it takes a lot of preparation, when we're moving to new resources or thinking about new ways of sharing learning resources with students, that can be also a difficult transition. So we wanted to share some resources that we share with our own faculty that we've developed for them to help them with that process. Our department, Chloe and I, are available to support our faculty with that process, but we just wanted to share what resources we've developed over time in hopes that it's helpful to maybe some of you out there. So please feel free to scan the QR code, or if you already have the slides themselves, you can click on the link here on the slide, and that will bring you to the same page. So again, these next couple slides will look familiar for those who joined us yesterday. The intention behind these next two slides is really to share that when we're thinking about how we design online classes, when we're thinking through how we assess students online, again, it takes a lot of creativity on all of you as faculty. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of thoughtfulness. And our department at College of the Canyons has developed a number of resources to support faculty with that process, because we realize that it's difficult for every individual to do that on their own. And we have found that having a support team, and we've got a couple other team members who weren't able to travel with us to Taiwan, but having, even though we're a small team, having a team that can create a variety of resources to support faculty is really important, because just as Chloe was sharing, AI is continuing to evolve and change so quickly. So are the strategies that we're learning from each other about how to best teach and learn online. And so we've found that having a support system in a department is really, really helpful. So we just wanted to share some examples of, we do this by offering talks like this and webinars and workshops. Bringing faculty together in a room where they're actually sharing their ideas we found is really helpful. It's really great to learn from other faculty colleagues, even in different departments, just to hear what they're doing in their online classes or maybe how they're assessing students. That can be really helpful for our faculty. You take away maybe some new skills or learn some new tricks, learning from each other. We've described some of the training. We've developed online training for our faculty. So we offer that support in a number of ways, but really it's not so much the what we do, it's just emphasizing that you all function as a support system for each other. And if there's a way to really develop those resources so that they're in one place, we found that very helpful, so that faculty have access to tools and support, and even people. It might be faculty who kind of become the leaders of online teaching and learning here at your university, and they can be support to others. So we just wanted to share that really it's a collaborative process amongst all of us, right, as faculty too. It's not just the process of our students collaborating in class. It's really an opportunity for us to learn and grow together and learn from each other. So now we'll open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions, maybe online or here in person.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, so our students kind of used to the online lecture, okay? But after COVID-19 pandemic, we kind of ask students to come to in the class in person, because students always ask us to upload our teaching materials before the lecture. So in the class, they always look at their tablet, and they don't have eye contact with the teacher or lecturer in the class. So do you have any suggestion that can kind of modify or change this kind of situation? Because as you mentioned that interaction is very important, but in this way, they just look at their tablet, and I don't see they kind of look at the teacher from time to time. Thank you.
Because yes, it's definitely very challenging, even if students are in person. If they're looking down at their tablet or online, if their screens are off, you don't know if they're there. One strategy that we encourage our faculty to use is, we call it chunking. So lecture for a short amount of time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then next do an activity for maybe, it could be 10, it could be 20 minutes, but an activity where if you're in person, students are talking with each other, maybe they're discussing something that you've just shared with them. We'd like to hope that they're following along with you in those 10 or 15 minutes while you're lecturing, but those opportunities where the students are collaborating is what we call active learning. That really is an opportunity to kind of break up the lecture, because we also know in terms of attention span, human beings, we're very smart, but we don't have very long attention spans. And after a certain point, we really do stop paying attention, or we're not listening as critically anymore. So a strategy that we encourage is to lecture for a little bit and then have some sort of activity where students are engaging with each other or engaging with you, and then go back to lecturing. We found that that helps try to keep students a little more engaged and a little more focused. We do very much encourage sharing the materials. You might consider possibly sharing some of the materials after the lecture. That way students still have access to the learning material, but unless that material helps them in that class, maybe you share it after the lecture so they're a little more present and hopefully listening a little more while you're lecturing, and then they're going and doing these activities, and then you lecture again, and at the end of the lecture, end of the class, you say, okay, I'm going to put the materials online so you can review. That might be a strategy that works.
Yeah, and there are some fun technology, I'm sure all of you have seen them, that are available online, like tools for quizzing, where it's competitive and you can have it on the screen. Okay, we've talked about this one subject for 10 minutes. Let's see who can respond. And so everyone pulls out their phone, scans the QR code, joins the game, and then it pops up a question. And whoever answers the question first gets a higher on the podium, right? You've seen it. So it's fun. Those type of things, keeping it fresh, and maybe the fact that everybody has a tablet or bringing technology, find ways to use that technology to keep it engaging so that they don't know what to expect. But they do know that they're going to have to engage. So they know to expect that they have to do something. It's not just, they can't just sit there and listen and then leave. They're going to have to be participating, yes. But that's a good question.
Yes. Okay, I'll try to stimulate a little bit.
Yes, please do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I have a question. Actually, today I learned one term like open pedagogy. Actually, we did that in my classroom, but I didn't know that it's like open pedagogy. So my question is that we try to use like open pedagogy to kind of like make up or to compensate the materials that we can share in class. Like your suggestion or your experiences is that when we use the open pedagogy, is in like during the class or before the class or after the class, like, and how teacher, as a teacher can evaluate the content and which can serve as a good material for the students?
I think there are a number of ways you could do it. We have seen some faculty structure it like an assignment or an activity. So you might ask students to research or look up something or work together. They create something, so you've identified standards for what you're looking for. You can still grade or evaluate the quality of the material that they're producing, but also sharing with them that you're not just turning in a paper that then you grade it and they're done with it and no one looks at it. You're also explaining, once we're finished with this, this is going to be a collection that other students will learn from. Or maybe it somehow is shared so that the university is seeing and their peers are saying, oh, my friend was part of this collection of work that's now being shared amongst the university. So you can still structure it as an assignment, for example, but the end result, maybe then you put it all together in some sort of document that is shared out or some sort of student presentation. Maybe it becomes boards that are in the library on display and it's all the students' work, like a collection of their work that way. So it can still be students creating the work and maybe you're working with them. they might create something and you feel like, oh, it needs some modifications or it needs to be improved a little bit. But then it becomes this collaborative experience. So now the end result shows your name, but also students' name as part of this collection of work that lives. So that can be one example. But really, it's kind of however you would like to structure it. But it's mostly just the concept of bringing students in to create something that kind of lives on and doesn't just go in the trash and no one reads it afterwards. So there are
Peer review maybe as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
having students peer review each other's work, so maybe, yeah. There's a lot of strategies, but that's exciting that you've already
really
doing
great
that.
you're doing
Wow.
that already.
Wow.
Well, honestly, I think that kind of like envy your faculty members because you have very strong support team to provide this kind of like open resources for them. So my question is how you can collect all these useful online super resources for your faculty members.
Well, I mean, in terms of OER, our college has been very fortunate to have been creating OER for many, many years. But we also have the support of our state government. So California has invested in full programs, so degree programs that can be completed that are all OER. So really it's about just sharing those resources. So that QR code links to a lot of repositories. Some of our work, faculty or our team have found from other work that other faculty have created. And then our faculty say, I'm gonna switch some things or make it personal to my students in California. One time we heard there was a university in Canada that was using some work that our faculty created, but then they made changes so that it was relevant to Canada because they're not in Southern California. So that's kind of the beauty of OER, that a lot of it is already there. And then hopefully it's not as much work to then make it personal for your students, or maybe even translating so that it's relevant for students in your community or for the university. But we try to do our best to support our faculty that way.
Yeah, another way, I think maybe Moodle has this in Canvas. In our learning management system, we have something called the Commons. And it's maybe I created a course for my class and I'm like, I want my fellow faculty to use this resource. I'm happy for them to use it. I can share it to the Commons with a Creative Commons license so that it allows others to use my work, and it will just give me the attribution, but I don't get any money for it, but I'm just like sharing it. And so many of our faculty will create maybe a learning module or some resources for their online courses, and they'll share it to the Commons, and then anyone who has access, any instructors that use Canvas are able to access that. So that we have that way as well for sharing, like instructional. Maybe I made a really good assignment or a quiz or an exam and I want to share it, I can just share it to the Commons. And then all across California and the US, other faculty can use it. So that's a very good resource as well.
Well, and that's where I'll just add, the collaboration amongst faculty here in your own university can be really helpful, because if, like Chloe was saying, if faculty are willing to share, this is an assignment I created and I like it and it's working well, or students are creating good work, or this is my online class and they're willing to share that, that's really helpful as maybe a starting point to help then other faculty. Because if Chloe has created a really good module and someone else has created a really good assessment, well, those are two great things that I don't have to create now because it's been shared with me from my colleagues. So you all also are a great support for each other to learn from. That can help as well, because that's really how over time you develop more resources, by sharing.